2024. Welcome, colleagues, staff, guests. Item 1 on the agenda is approval of the February 22nd, 2024 Business Management Committee meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Properly moved, properly seconded. Any corrections to the minutes that need to be noted? I call the vote. The motion passes. Minutes are approved. Item number 2 on the agenda is a resolution authorizing award of a contract for the procurement of Microsoft License Enterprise Agreement, IFB B50469. Nancy Joseph, Director of Technology, Infrastructure, and Production, will present this to us.
Okay, yes. Is this working? Sorry. Okay. Good morning, Chairman Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and other members of the Business Management Committee. My name is Nancy Joseph, Director of Infrastructure and Production within the Office of Technology. I'm here to present a request for resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of Microsoft License Enterprise Agreement, IFB B50469. Next slide, please. Microsoft licenses are crucial for MARTA's operation as they provide a diverse range of essential business tools. These licenses include Microsoft Office tools such as Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint, Project for scheduling, Teams for online meeting, instant messaging, personal cloud, file sharing, and content sharing with external partners, Visio for diagram, Word, as well as SharePoint which host our intranet, allowing for more effective intra-organizational communication, Power BI for dashboard and data analytics, Azure Cloud Computing, and an enhanced cybersecurity tools. Next slide, please. Microsoft does not sell product directly to organizations. Therefore, we rely on Microsoft authorized reseller to procure these licenses and expertise needed to install or configure the product for our environment. Notice to bidders was sent to 18 vendors on February 1st. On March 5th, 2024, the lowest responsive and responsible bid was submitted by Crayon Software Expert LLC in the amount of $9,246,344.99. Next slide, please. The contract is a 3-year term and is being funded by local capital fund with subsequent yearly funding. The DBE goal is set at 0 as this is a software license purchase only. Next slide, please. The Department of Technology requests the Business Management Committee recommend approval of the resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of Microsoft License Enterprise Agreement, IFB B50469, to Crayon Software Expert LLC in the amount of $9,246,344.99. Next slide, please.
Approval. Properly moved and seconded.
Thank you.
Discussion or questions? Good thing I invested in Microsoft a long time ago. Let's vote for the resolution. All right, the resolution passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Third item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the defeasance of the MARTA Refunding Series 2016 bonds. Mr. Hurley, welcome to the lectern.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Durrett, Ms. Williamson, Business Management Committee, and Mr. Greenwood. I'm Kevin Hurley, and I'm here to request the approval of the resolution authorizing the defeasance of the MARTA refunding Series 2016B bonds. Next slide. The agenda for today consists of some background into the transaction, discussion of the refunding opportunity, the selection of the underwriters, next steps, and board committee action. Next slide. Changes to federal law several years ago have negated the ability to execute advanced tax-exempt bond refundings. However, using a cash optimization strategy allows MARTA to use cash from its reserves to establish an escrow account to pay off certain maturities of our 2016B bonds, and then after a mandatory 15-day waiting period, sell new bonds at lower rates, and thereby reduce debt service payments. This, in effect, accomplishes the same results as a tax-exempt bond refunding. The request before the Business Management Committee today is the first step in executing the cash optimization transaction, authorizing the use of cash to establish the escrow. The second step will be to issue new bonds to reimburse MARTA for the cash outlay. This will be done in May. The underwriters for the transaction have been selected from MARTA's board-approved negotiated bond underwriting pool. Next slide. This slide presents a little more detail on the refunding opportunity. MARTA staff is proposing to defease approximately $127 million of $242 million in outstanding par value from the 2016B bonds. The defeasance would be scheduled for April 17th, 2024. The bond maturities were selected because they generate the largest savings in the 2016 series. MARTA staff would then price the new bonds on May 8th, 2024, gain board approval on May 9th, 2024, and close the transaction on May 22nd, 2024. The new money series designated 2024A would be green bonds and would be verified by a second-party verifier and would yield approximately a net present value savings of $18 to $22 million. Next slide. The top of this slide presents MARTA's approved negotiated underwriter pool. The bullet at the bottom represents the 4 firms that have been selected to participate. The lead firm is Jeffries LLC, with co-senior is identified as Wells Fargo. Loop Capital Markets and Siebert Williams Shank and Company are the diverse firms that have been selected. In addition to being a diverse firm, Loop Capital also has elected due to their experience in executing this type of complicated transaction. Next slide. The next steps start with this request before the committee today, followed by gaining board approval on April the 11th. Then the defeasance would be executed on April 17th, followed by pricing of the new money bonds and savings results being shared at the board work session on May 9th. Immediately following the board work session, the board would be asked to approve the resolution for the issuance, sale, execution, and delivery of the 2024A bonds. Then likewise, the closing would be on May 22nd. Next slide. At this time, I respectfully request the Business Management Committee approval of the resolution authorizing the defeasance of the MARTA refunding series 2016B bonds. Next slide. I return the floor to Chairman Durrett.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Entertain a motion and a second already made. Discussion. Yes, Mr. Pine.
No questions. I would just like to thank you and your team for taking the initiative, because I've seen over the last 3 or 4 years, you continually reach out and try to make these initiatives to reduce costs for the system. So thank you.
Yes, sir. We certainly try to keep an eye on it and save MARTA some money whenever we can.
Okay, Bill?
My concern here is, first of all, not understanding the process at all, but my concern is that changes in federal law don't allow tax-exempt bond refunding. So obviously, you've come up with some method to get around those changes in that law. Should I be afraid that we are now violating some sort of federal law that prohibits MARTA from making any money off of the what was the word? What's the word we're using now? Defeasance of these bonds?
No, sir. You shouldn't have any worries about that. This is a tried methodology. It's just it's become more available to MARTA because we have large cash reserves that allow us to absorb that outlay for several months before we're having to be able to be reimbursed. But we're in compliance with all federal laws by doing this transaction.
Okay, why would they do away with tax-exempt bond refunding? What's the purpose? What's the reasoning behind that? You know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I imagine it's the fact that the bondholders are tax exempt, and to lower the taxable rate further is something that's not palatable. I'm sure it's to generate more funds, but I'm not exactly sure why people are against it.
Okay, well,
Certainly having the ability saves municipalities considerable outlays. Like in this instance, just for 3 maturities, it's going to save us $18 to $22 million. So it's nice for the municipalities to be able to do it.
Compliance with the law, but it's the chairman that's going to jail. If
I'm
somebody
willing
has
to
to go
take the
jail
risk,
for this,
Bill.
it's you.
Mr. Andrews?
Yeah, I just want to try and give Mr. Floyd some comfort. You know, first of all, it's advanced refundings that the law has stopped, not refundings in total, right? And a lot of it, what Kevin was saying is, you know, the advanced refundings would benefit us, but not always the bondholders themselves, right? Because we're swapping it out for a lower interest sooner than what they were originally anticipating. So it really is just about the money, and the folks who were able to get the rules changed have more money than us. And it's typically how lobbying works, right? And you know, in this case, all we're doing is refunding some bonds by paying cash, and then we're going to go issue new ones. So it's just 2 separate transactions. It's not the same transactions, and that's why it's proper. And we're not the only entity that does it. Other municipalities across the state, across the country do this on a regular basis now.
Rod?
Yeah, that was my question, was that we've done some type of rebonding, refinancing of bonds every year since I've been on the board. So this is not anything different than what we've done in the past, is that fair to say?
It's slightly different just based on what Mr. Andrews said. In the
Okay.
past, we've been able to do advanced tax exempt refundings, and then it was taken away. We did execute this same type of transaction about this time last year, as has been previously presented.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, I'll call the question. Properly moved and seconded, as of course I said before. Let's vote. Resolution passes. Thank you, Mr. Hurley.
Yes, sir.
In other matters, for information only, you have the fiscal year 24 February consolidated financial highlights and financial key performance indicators. Kevin, were we going to talk about that at all?
Yes, sir. If you recall, just for a point of clarity on the financial highlights.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I wanted to point out that while this is for information only, we did execute a credit in the fair revenue line in the month of February. And it's a result of the mobile app was allowing credits to people's accounts, and then they would remove the app, reload the app, and they would do it again. So we found some fraud, and so we took the write down in February. So you're going to see that in the fair revenue line for the financial highlights. Just wanted to give everyone a heads up. That write down is about $900,000.
And I just heard a question whispered over to my left. Has it been fixed?
Yes, the gap has been closed. It was closed a couple months ago, and we're monitoring it to make sure that it's not happening further.
Very good.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. With that being the last item on the agenda, then I'll call this committee meeting to a close, and we'll prepare for the next committee meeting. Thank you.
The Planning and Capital Programs Committee meeting. First, I'll ask for approval of the February 22nd, 2024 Planning and Capital Programs Committee meeting minutes. There's been a motion. There's been a second. Any discussion? All right, please vote. All right, it passes. Ms. Rocha, I believe we have a briefing regarding the 5 Points Transformation Project.
Good morning, Vice Chair Powers, Mr. Greenwood, and members of the board. My name is Carrie Rocha. I'm the Chief Capital Officer here at MARTA, and I'm pleased to present a briefing for 5 Points Transformation. Next slide, please. This briefing will contain an update on the work that we have done to date, and this is not physical construction work, but this is all the NEPA and planning and design work that needs to get done in the project. We'll detail the impacts of the impending closure for our customers and the public, and discuss the next steps to get under contract with Skanska. Next slide, please. So there has been a lot of work that has happened on this project since announcement of the final concept and moving the plan forward. In last spring and summer, the project team initiated the NEPA process with a Section 106 review with a determination of eligibility and an assessment of effects, and ultimately was determined that 5 Point Station was deemed under the historic preservation. So through this process, we eventually in September received a letter from FTA that made a NEPA determination for a class of action of environmental assessment. And so we have been following that process since then. A memorandum of agreement for mitigation was signed in January, and that is an agreement between us with SHPO and with FTA. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that mitigation is. Our environmental assessment was completed, which was a rather lengthy process that we go and get approvals. We put that up for public comment between December 1st and January 5th. We received our FONSI, which is the finding of no significant impact this week. So it was signed on 3/25, as well as the Section 4F documentation, which just was waiting for the FONSI to be completed. And We have also completed the HABS survey. So this is a very specialized photography survey, which was part of the mitigation, and that has been submitted to the National Park Service, and that was completed in January. So a lot of activity with these very parallel processes and paths that have been done. We have other processes that are in process right now, or in progress. The RAISE grant, as everyone is aware, we have a $25 million grant from FTA for this project. The paper grant agreement is in process, so we had basically agreed in concept on that, was awaiting the environmental documentation to be completed, and so now towards the end of this week, we anticipate sending that back over to FTA and to proceed with, hopefully within the next few weeks of getting that signed. We are still currently working on the site plans for accommodations needed for our temporary stops, and we've got a pretty good plan for that, and we continue to get some great ideas from our operations teams and as well as the public on recommendations for how to make this easier. We have made final plans for our ADA access shuttle, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but we do need to finalize those plans. We are in the process of final negotiations for the deconstruction and demolition for our component guaranteed maximum price. So as you may be aware, this project is being delivered under CMAR, which is an accelerated delivery model where we have individual packages. It's construction manager at risk. Individual packages are negotiated and then given to the contractor to kind of expedite the construction process. So we have 2 packages that we have been negotiating with the contractor since the fall, which have to pertain to the design for the deconstruction. And so we do need to complete those and then obviously get board authorization to enter under contract for those. Next slide, please. So just to refamiliarize you with the design that we are moving forward with for 5 Points, this is a rendering. You see the station soccer on the left side. So on the very left top, you can see Forsyth Street. Towards the bottom where the buses are in the sawtooth there, that's Alabama. And then on the right side, aligned with the trees there, is Peachtree. Towards the top, you can see where the Broad Street Plaza comes into the station. Next slide, please. And this is just a rendering showing you some of the features of the station with the roof kind of picked up. So open concourse area, connection for Broad Street to continue great pedestrian access, continuing to have our station soccer and community garden, but again, facilitating really good pedestrian movements as well as really good transfers from rail to bus or bus to bus at this location. Next slide, please. So the planning for the construction phase, we've had some goals and some things that we've really focused on. One was to minimize disruption to travel patterns by providing continued access to downtown stations and nearby stations. So the good part is that our nearby stations are not terribly far. They're within that half-mile radius, so we do have some alternatives to provide for our customers. There will be no pedestrian or bus access to the station itself, and I'll go into a little bit more. Rail transfers, though, from north, south, east, west will be allowed within the station, so we're going to be closing just the concourse level and the plaza level in order to complete this work. And when the project is complete, we will restore these routes that come back to the sawtooths. That'll be along Alabama and Forsyth. Next slide, please. Under the detour strategies, we've had a substantial team working diligently on trying to minimize the detours and how to communicate. Some of it's, not so much about what we have to do, but how we can more clearly communicate to the public on where they will be picking up their bus or being dropped off. So we wanted to maintain direct downtown access where possible and through route where that already exists. We would detour bus routes that terminate and layover at the station and other nearby stations, increasing capacity at those nearby stations to make sure we can accommodate all of the customers there, and then make any schedule adjustments in the April markup as needed to prepare for these detours. Next slide. In terms of rider impacts, and I will just state, most of the, if not all of this information was contained in our environmental assessment document. So this was part of the document that we did ask the public to comment on. These are the statistics for the rider impacts. As you can see, there's 20,000 rail ride-throughs. So those folks are unimpacted. We're not changing their rail route at all. The rail transfers themselves, 17,000 customers. And so again, not impacting those customers. The concern and the focus that we've had here are the walk-up access customers of 12,000, the rail bus transfers at 4,000, and the bus-to-bus transfers at 500. All walk-up passengers are within that half mile of other stations under the guidance that we have, and so we do have other bus options. And so, again, the communication process will be very important to make sure that folks know where they need to be going. And then, as I noted, the rail ride through passengers and most just making those transfers will not be affected. Next slide, please. I've described the no pedestrian access. The concourse level and fare gates will be closed. There will be no patron restrooms, no elevator access from north, south, and east and west platforms. So I'm going to talk to you about what we're doing to accommodate anyone that needs ADA access or a stroller or other needs. The closure to this plaza concourse is planned for 18 months, and that is what we put into the EA document. We are doing our best to work with the contractor to get it open as quickly as we can, but without knowing all of the details for construction, this is what we did put into the document. Accommodations will be made to reopen this area for the World Cup. So the contractor knows that is a high priority of ours as well as the entire region to make sure that we can accommodate the crowds that we have for World Cup. So we'll be opening it up under a temporary configuration, and we'll certainly be beautifying it, and whether it's murals or other plans that we have, we're working on a number of those plans on what that will look like. But again, we can't nail that down until we really know where we are in construction. And at this point, we know that construction will continue through 2028. Next slide, please. Some of our services will be relocated, and these will be relocated to the Ashby station. So the MARTA police precinct will be relocated here, and you can kind of see the layout of the different compound that we have planned at Ashby. The Lost and Found will be there, the reduced fare office, our ride store, and MARTA Hope. And again, these are temporary relocations, but again, keeping them relatively close to 5 points so that our customers have access. Next slide, please. And it's worth noting that we will also be closing Station Soccer, the MARTA Market, and the 5 Points Community Garden for construction. Next slide, please. So real high level, and I won't spend a lot of time on these slides. They are in the packet, and so feel free to ask if there's some specific questions. But these are the impacted routes. So there will be 3 stations that will support additional bus route transfers. Georgia State, King Memorial, and Civic Center. And you see that there's 5 routes that will be going to GSU. There's 2 routes going to King Memorial and 1 that's going to Civic Center. The 3 listed on the bottom will be through routed through the 5 Points area. Next slide, please. So with the detours to Georgia State, you can see where the station is in relation to 5 Points. These 5 routes that are listed will be the ones that will be making additional stops at Georgia State. And we are working through, like I said, all of the challenges associated with scheduling and notifications and signage and placement. Next slide. This slide details a little bit more on where we intend to install temporary bus zones and have some dedicated parking for MARTA fleet vehicles, so making sure we've got room for all of the functions that we need to have at all of our stations. Next slide. And this is just another view of kind of where that temporary layover zone will be and the temporary bus stop. Next slide. And this is a last view of that temporary layover space on Jesse Hill and the bus stop that's underneath the rail bridge there. Next slide. The detour routes to King Memorial do not require additional on-street accommodations, so I should note at the GSU location we are working with the City of Atlanta to coordinate that work to get installed in advance. And for this location at King Memorial, we do not require additional on-street accommodation for these 2 routes. Next slide. And lastly, the Civic Center with the 816 does not require additional on-street routes or on-street accommodations. Next slide. And this is a map showing the 3 through routed services for the Route 3, Route 40, and Route 813. Next slide. Finally, as I mentioned, due to elevator challenges and where our elevators stop and being able to provide service for anyone needing ADA access between north, south, east, west, we will need to put in an ADA transfer shuttle. So these shuttles will operate on our service plan for 22 hours. We'll have roughly 5-minute headways or as needed if we need to load and go. The runtime is roughly 10 minutes, and the alignment will connect between Georgia State to Peachtree Center Station. I will note there were some older routes that we had considered doing more of a circuitous route, and through working with our operations team as well as our customer experience team, we know that this will provide our customers much better service, much more timely than the original route that we had planned. Next slide. So this moves on to the construction contract part. So as I noted, in order to get ourselves under construction, we had to have our FONSI signed, which we did earlier this week. The second part is to get the paper grant agreement signed, so that's well underway. The third part is to get our contractor under contract. And so we've been doing everything we can in the background to kind of make sure we had the right timing, the right approach, working with our safety group and how we need to provide egress. We have Skanska Building under contract with us as our CMAR contractor. They have been working in conjunction with SOM as our construction manager. And again, it's a very, very detailed dismantling of this brutalist architecture canopy. Each piece kind of is surgically taken apart and needs to be handled with care. And so this is requires detailed plans in order to execute well. And so that's what SOM has put together, those designs to deconstruct and demolish other elements that are on the plaza section, and then what we will be building back. So we currently have what Skanska has proposed is under the deconstruction and demolition packages. There'll be future packages, and I will detail them in a future slide here. But these deconstruction and demolition packages are planned to start in June. So as most folks know too, when we get a price from the contractor is counting on us starting at a certain time period. So which is why I'm here today to kind of preview this for you, because when we have a final negotiated number, we do want to move very quickly to get this underway so we don't incur additional fee. Once the remaining design packages are done, so the build back piece, which is around the 60% design right now, we will have Skanska propose on those. But these are the initial packages to get the demolition and deconstruction underway. Next slide, please. And here's a list of the major deconstruction tasks. As I've described, this is a post-tension concrete structure that needs to be taken apart very carefully. We need to maintain existing waterproofing. As you can imagine, we have several systems that run all the way to the roof. And so in order to keep our fire protection systems and other elements safe for the downstairs area where the platforms are, there's a lot of taking apart and putting things back together in order to do that. And before deconstruction will start, all of those services that I noted earlier will be relocated. The Hope Office, the Lost and Found, the Reduced Fare, and the police will be relocated to Ashby. Next slide. Other demolition tasks, as I described, was maintaining the existing fire protection to service just the platforms, removing escalators in our vertical transportation, clearing vegetation and concrete off of the site. Next slide. And this is an early schedule. As I noted, we are in the middle of negotiations, so this is real high level. So as noted here, design for the deconstruction and demolition is 100%. We have those packages in. The build back right now, so what the new canopy in the plaza will look like and the concourse is at a 60% design. We anticipate at least 2 future packages for Skanska. So the build back of the first package being utilities and civil works, and the second being the build back of the canopy and vertical transformation pieces. And you can see that the design, we're planning on finishing 100% completion by the end of July of this year. Next slide. So our next steps, as I noted, we've received the proposal, revised proposal yesterday from Skanska, so we're still looking at that now, and that's under review. That negotiation has been ongoing for several months. We will be coming back to you with a future resolution to look for authorization of funding, and that will be once we finalize those numbers, confirm all the DBE participation and the scheduled deadlines. And I will turn the floor back over to you, Chair Powers.
All right, Ms. Odd.
Yes, this is probably a pretty uneducated question, but this has been on a slowdown for a while because of this historical significance of the station. So how do we get to move forward where somebody in Washington decided that this building in its brutalist style was beautiful and had historical significance? Are we preserving part of that? Was there a finding that it wasn't significant, or how do you deal with that?
No, there was a finding that it was historically significant, and so that mitigation that I mentioned is an agreement between us, SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, as well as FTA. And so the mitigation that everyone agreed on were essentially two elements. One is that HABS photography, so it's like a very specialized photography, which we completed back in December, took the pictures, where you go out and you take pictures from lots of different angles and you actually print them. So we have submitted them digitally so that they are good with everything we've done before we take it apart. We have also provided them with engineered drawings because we have the drawings from the existing structure. And then the last piece is we'll do some interpretive panels. So you will see in the future, we'll have some panels at the new station that will commemorate what was at the old station.
All right, so we can all remember that beautiful brutalist
Yes.
style. Okay. My second question is the new design. Unfortunately, 5 Points tends to be a station that we hear crime in. Were there considerations taken to make this a safer station?
Absolutely. So within the new design, sight lines being improved, pedestrian walk areas, lighting, all of those elements, vastly improved in terms of what we have there today. In addition, we do, continue to have plans to activate the space. So things like station soccer and other activities ongoing on the plaza are great ways to deter crime. But we have incorporated a number of elements into our design.
Great, thank you. I'm not a big fan of brutalists, so I'm looking forward to a more beautiful and safer station.
Mr. Durrett.
Yeah, Kali, I guess this is for you. We are entering a period of a great deal of disruption to be followed by massive improvements for our patrons. And I think it's really important, and I'd like to maybe have a work session to think about, to understand what our communications and public relations strategies and tactics are going to be, because this is, I think, a time to really tell a good story, and I want us to be very thoughtful and proactive about it and not depend upon news stories to be what the public gets to understand what's going on.
Thank you, Jim. And in part, in response to that, at our last board meeting, we started talking about, the era that we're entering into and really painting the picture that, we talked about other progressive cities around the country and some of the big projects they've done and some of the disruptions, and talking about that as a necessary part of the improvement process. We will continue with that theme as we come through, even on an individual basis, reminding people of why we're doing that. We've also beefed up in our engagement, our community engagement department, to make sure that we're able to tell that story and weave the same theme through every one of our projects. So you'll see a lot more of that as we move forward.
Mr. Frierson.
Yeah, one of the things that I experienced when I walked 5 Points with Jeff Parker was there was a facade that's right there. I think that was part of the old building that was there when they developed the 5 Point. I'm assuming that still will be in place or be relocated in this whole process?
No, it will stay in place within our station. So that actually spans the two platforms. And under our station rehab program, which is ongoing now, we are cleaning that facade.
Okay.
Okay.
the Eisman facade. So we are doing a cleaning process, and because that is historic, requires a very detailed process as well. But we are moving forward with that under our station rehab work that's ongoing now.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then I do hope in the process, it will displace the pigeons that live in that space. Because anybody been down there realize that those pigeons are having them a good time on everybody's experience. So with all this construction, I hope they find another home, and we'll move through this. But I think it's a complicated job, and I appreciate all that's going into it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Floyd?
Thank you. I see your 18-month deconstruction, your 18-month period for deconstruction. Do you have a date when you will actually close the entrance to the 5 Point Station? Do you have that date yet?
We do not have that date. Once we have our contract with Skanska, which is, again, part of the reason why I'm pushing, I know we're going pretty quick now that we've got the go. We will lock in that date, and we will be sharing that date very soon. But we're negotiating that contract with Skanska now. We anticipate getting started in early June. We still have some early work to get done, building a crane pad and all the pieces that we'll have to do on Alabama. And we'll try to keep whatever access open on the platform and concourse, or I'm sorry, the plaza and concourse as long as we can. But our 18-month starts when we close that down.
Okay, so that this yellow phase here starts the date you close the entrance. Is that right?
So the closure to the plaza and the concourse won't happen until right after we install the crane pad.
Okay, so is that in this in this deconstruction phase? Is that, I'm trying to understand when the 18 months starts and when it ends.
If you go back one. So within this deconstruction phase, yes. So the closure is that is the 18 months.
That is it. So as best you can, you're telling us now that sometime in May or June, you're going to close the entrance to that station from the street.
It won't be May. It will likely be June, but we'll let you know the date.
And that's the date the 18-month closure starts.
That's
what you've told the contractor. It's 18 months from whenever that date starts.
With an additional caveat that he has to open it back up for World Cup.
For World Cup. When is that?
See the soccer ball?
All right,
So-
all right, I'm confused. It's 18 months. If you go from 24 to 26, okay, so the actual 18 months runs.
From whenever they start. So that's why it's a little bit fluid, right? So no matter what, they'll be back open for World Cup. We're not going to be complete for World Cup on the putback, but this deconstruction phase should be done by then.
Okay, all right. Now, the other question I have is you say you're negotiating with the contractor, and we have a construction manager at risk. Is that the arrangement we're using?
That is correct.
Okay, and when do you expect, when will we know what this project is going to cost?
So we continue to work to a total project cost, and I should have grabbed that number for you today. I believe it's around $230 million is the total project cost. So within there are each of these individual packages. I will bring to you a package for demolition and deconstruction, and then I could also show you what we have reserved for the rest of the project. But that within that total project cost, I'm trying not to get myself in trouble on the negotiating line here too. But the total project cost that we are holding to right now is $230 million for this
Okay,
transformation project.
and so so we're fairly confident we're going to stay somewhere close to that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I mean, if nothing happened to date that might impact that change in that number.
I can't guarantee you we will, with the fluidity of construction costs, with timelines and accommodations sometimes that we need to make in order to provide service, there's a lot of unknowns that are still there. But the budget we're trying to hold to is the $230 million.
Okay, when these negotiations with the contractor finish, can you tell us then a guaranteed maximum number?
So when I come to you next with the contract, with their work order, I will be able to tell you a guaranteed maximum price for the deconstruction and demolition at this point.
Okay, but not the reconstruction part of it?
Correct. That'll be the next phase, but that will be relatively soon.
Okay, but that's negotiated with the same contractor, just under a different time frame.
Correct.
So to speak.
Yep.
Okay, so it's when you reach that point, and that's when we will know what that's gonna cost. I mean, we will have established a maximum on the deconstruction, and then when will we know what the reconstruction is gonna cost? And I know it's a guess, okay, what date is that?
So we have final design plans that should be complete around July of this year. It's going to take the contractor some time to kind of pull their cost information together. But I would anticipate we're going to know everything on the cost on this by the late fall.
Okay, so sometime this year,
Mm-hmm.
we should know whether the 235 million is 410 million or whatever the number might be.
That is correct.
Pretty good handle on that this year.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Zagave.
Thank you very much for the update and appreciate all the hard work. I know this has been a project that a lot of time and discussion has gone into. I just had a quick question on looking at this demolition timeline. Totally makes sense to say, you know, we're in design, pre-construction, deconstruction, demolition, pause, and then construction. For that pause period around the World Cup, what is, like, is there going to be a temporary structure that's going to be there to allow for ingress and egress, or like just what's the broad plan during that period to allow the station to be able to operate?
We have not been able to detail that fully yet.
Okay.
I will say it will look really nice. Colleen and myself, Melissa, have talked about some opportunities. They've observed some things in the Pier City trips that they've done, you know, for temporary works. You know, I worked in Boston for a number of years. We had lots of facades up for different things to keep it safe, to make sure people know where they're going, and then to make it look attractive, you know, and welcoming for our visitors. So we will certainly come back to you all and let you know what those plans look like, if that is okay with you.
That sounds good. And just maybe a high-level question, like once we demolition it, is there going to have to just generally be a structure over the top of it for water intrusion that's going to be there throughout the entire period?
They will need to do some waterproofing in order to prevent all of the rainwater from going into the station, yes.
Okay.
Ms. Scott.
Yes, I have a very clarifying question. The slide regarding ADA,
Yes.
how will that affect our patrons that may be sight challenged as well? How will they know concerning the rerouting?
George.
It says ADA rail
or
line
round up.
transfer, but it doesn't say which ADA. So I'm trying to figure out how will affect those that are part of ADA that are sight challenged.
So this is to overcome the elevator challenge.
Yes, I understand. So, Board Member Scott, what we would do is we would make sure that there is some really robust and frequent outreach before we affect the change, communicating to our site challenge riders that there is a solution where they would get off at, let's say they were traveling north-south and they wanted to transfer over to the east-west line. They would know that they would disembark at Peachtree Center, make their way you know, up to the street level, and then catch one of those shuttles that Carrie mentioned. Likewise, someone that's traveling on the east-west line, wanting to transfer to the north-south line, would disembark at Georgia State. Again, it's going to, you know, to answer your question, it's really going to be contingent on making sure that we communicate in a very effective way before we shut the station down.
So that includes those that are sight challenged
Sure.
and those that are maybe depend on wheelchairs as
That,
well.
that's correct.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, seeing no other questions, thank you very much for the presentation. I'll turn it over for other matters and turn it over to CEO, Mr. Greenwood, to discuss infill stations. Mr. Greenwood.
Thank you very much, Chair Powers, and I just want to call everyone's attention to the screen. This is the slide we shared yesterday with Atlanta City Council. This was all precipitated, of course, by an announcement at the State of the City on Monday that the mayor made about the vision for infill stations along the Beltline. So, you know, questions ensued after that. So yesterday we were able to share with the Atlanta City Council basically this, you know, on the right, the artist's concept of the Murphy Crossing site that the mayor had mentioned, and then on the left, the 22-mile Beltline as it intersects with our red, gold, and blue-green heavy rail system. So without, you know, getting into the names of the specific locations of the stations, visually and conceptually, it was clear that there is a possibility that we can move forward in fulfilling this vision. So I made the point also that infill stations is not a new conversation. That infill stations has actually been, you know, discussed since 2007, and that in 2016, voters approved a list for the MARTA City of Atlanta file that included infill stations. I also went on to express support for the concept because infill stations would allow us to leverage MARTA's existing 38-station heavy rail system and bring mobility and accessibility to a much wider population. I believe I said it was, you know, allowing us to be more things to more people, and would also support regional growth. At that point, you know, I made it clear that our next step, now that, you know, this is all fairly fresh since Monday's announcement, MARTA's role is now to go away and use the opportunity, now that it's been announced, to open up our conversations, have exploration discussions with some of our industry, polling industry expertise, and really shaping the strategy as to how this can occur. So, you know, more on that as things come, but, you know, we're going to start talking about and exploring financial opportunities here in terms of how we might use local, state, and federal partners and transit-oriented development to help pay for this. Next slide, please. And then yesterday and since Monday, there have been a lot of questions about Streetcar East and how does this impact Streetcar East. And just reiterating here what I said yesterday, that, you know, the two are independent of each other. MARTA has not decided to stop moving Streetcar East forward. We are in a study phase right now, and the study phase is outlined on the slide, where we're really talking about cost and feasibility, about replacing our wired streetcars with off-wire type of technology. The other study is really how to improve the efficiency and experience of the existing 2.7-mile alignment. So we expect that, you know, HDR is hard at work with that, as they have been as part of the process, and we expect that those studies will come in within the next month or so, and we'll be able to address those very independently of the infill station. So with that, I just wanted to be clear with the board. I realize that our notification to you came after the announcement. A lot of that information is draft at this point. We are now in the process of shaping and better defining how we move forward with this.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Greenwood. That is exciting news indeed. Mayor Floyd.
Well, just for Ms. Scott's benefit, I want to clarify, we were told last week that she couldn't comment or vote in these meetings, and I'm wondering, did I misunderstand that, or it's for her benefit? Because I don't want.
Yeah, so, you know, based on the bylaws, Ms. Scott, because she is qualified to run for DeKalb County Commissioner's seat, I'm not sure which seat, I apologize, she's not authorized or allowed to vote on any matter at the board until after the election. Ms. Scott is allowed to ask clarifying questions, but not partake in the debate or discussion of matters that could be seen as influencing a vote by the board.
Okay, thank you.
clarifying question, I'll talk to her and make that clear at the break.
Thank you,
Clearer at the break as to what actually a clarifying question is and what is not, okay? Okay, thank you.
Anything further as it related to Mr. Greenwood's presentation? All right, seeing none and no other matters, we'll stand in adjournment from the Planning and Capital Programs Committee.
please. I'd like to call the Operations and Safety Committee meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the February 22nd, 2024 minutes. Could I get a motion and a second, please? Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Could we please vote? This guy here. Okay, I will go ahead. Okay, the motion passes. Except for me. I can't X out. All right, motion passes. There we go. All right, the next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of qualifications for the procurement of environmental engineering, compliance, and sustainability consulting services, and that'll be led by Leslie Hubbard, our Director of Environmental Health and Safety. Leslie?
Hey, good morning, Chairman Pond, Vice Chair Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name's Leslie Hubble. I'm the Director of Environmental Health and Safety. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 2. This is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of qualification statements for the Environmental Engineering Compliance and Sustainability Consulting Services Contract, AE 50490. Next slide, please. Today, and this is just an overview, I'll go through the accomplishments on our current contract, talking about the framework under which we work, and then get into the scope of services for environmental compliance, environmental management systems, and sustainability. Next slide, please. So I'd like to spend some time highlighting accomplishments under the current contract. We've completed full design services for the Hamilton Industrial Wastewater Treatment Plant, seen in the photos at the top of the slide. Designs were also completed and are currently underway for multiple oil water separators, above ground storage tanks, exterior bus washing areas, and detention ponds. We use this contract to assist EHS with regulatory reporting and permitting. Also under this contract, we've cleaned up and closed 4 remediation sites at various facilities, closed 19 underground storage tanks, and completed life extension repairs on our above ground tanks. So on the bottom of the slide from left to right, you can see an underground storage tank pole. You can see then next to that one of our remediation systems that we removed. The third picture is drilling for a monitoring or remediation well, and the fourth is a newly coated above ground storage tank. Next slide, please. We also have completed our air emission performance testing, which is required under our CNG permits for Laredo and Perry. Numerous phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessments, achieved our ISO 14001 environmental management certification for now 11 MARTA facilities, and achieved the APTA Gold award for the sustainability commitment. Next slide, please. So this contract supports our environmental compliance programs required by the Environmental Protection Agency, Environmental Protection Division, and municipal regulations. It also supports our ISO certified environmental management system and the sustainability programs under the Environmental, Social, and Governance framework. Next slide, please. This is a follow-on contract to the current Environmental Engineering Consulting Services Contract, AE 30754. At a high level, the services cover the following environmental programs: hazardous and regulated waste management, stormwater and wastewater, storage tanks, air compliance, remediation, due diligence, environmental management systems, and sustainability. Next slide, please. Under the environmental compliance portion of the contract, the consultant will assist the Office of EHS with technical guidance, reporting, and permitting. The consultant will also provide full environmental design and engineering services to assist with fixing any environmental issues that we come across. They will also help us with field work, sampling, gauging, and maintenance of our remediation system that is remaining at Hamilton, and then assist as needed with inspections, audits, and training. Next slide, please. In support of our ISO certified EMS, the consultant will assist with technical guidance, program development, some high-level compliance audits, preparation for our external audits that are done by a registrar, and then occasional training and gap analyses. Next slide, please. We've also partnered with the Office of Sustainability to include sustainability consulting services in the contract. Now that it's own office, this will be a much larger portion of the contract than it had been previously. The contract will provide that office with technical guidance, program development, help develop climate mitigation strategies for the authority, develop solutions, and do training and gap analyses as well. Next slide, please. At this time, I'd like to ask for your approval of the resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of environmental engineering compliance and sustainability consulting services, AE 50490. Chair Pond, I'll turn it over to you for consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Leslie. Could we have a motion and a second? All right, moved by Powers, seconded by Floyd. Any questions, discussion? Obviously clear. Mr. Derrick.
To your knowledge, do we have any more USTs or sources of contamination that we're going to need to continue to address?
So we have 9 underground storage tanks left. A number of those, well, they're all in use. So until we have the ability or contract to replace them with above ground, they will continue to remain. Now, we do regular testing and monitoring to make sure they're not leaking. As far as environmental contamination goes, our remaining remediation sites at the Hamilton bus facility, the plume has gotten very small, but until we're able to remove the 4 underground storage tanks that are there to access the pit that's under them, and maybe do some renovations of that building, it'll remain open for a number of years.
I do have one add-on. Any other questions? We discussed this in the pre-brief, but this is a very broad-based contract with a myriad of requirements. Any one of those are fairly straightforward and not complex, and I would just hope this would be an opportunity to structure this where some of the smaller business firms could be competitive, because the very large firms will have all of the pieces, individual pieces, but this is an ideal contract to use some of the small business firms in Metro Atlanta. However, you can do that through the procurement process.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The current contract has a 30% DBE goal, so I certainly think something in the same range will be achievable. There are a number of small firms in this space.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, could we please vote? The motion passes.
All right, thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is a briefing for bus operations, the key performance indicators, and that'll be led by Thomas Dortz, the Deputy Chief of Bus Operations.
Good morning, Chairman Pond, Vice Chair Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations Safety Committee. My name is Thomas Drost. I'm the Deputy Chief of Bus Operations. I will be presenting a briefing related to on-time performance for both bus and mobility. Next slide, please. Today's presentation will underscore the importance of on-time performance as a measure of our responsibility and commitment to our customers and their overall experience. I'll also be discussing our team strategy and team engagement. Next slide, please. So what we're displaying here is our bus service monthly on-time performance. As you can see, month over month, we've had incremental progress. I want to highlight January. We did reach our OTP target of 78.8. There's no doubt we're trending in the right direction. We definitely still have a lot of work ahead of us to actually stabilize our performance. We definitely have identified many challenges that we are currently addressing. Some of those challenges are going to be our absenteeism, staff shortages, infrastructure, onboard equipment, somewhat parameters and settings within the system itself. And when you look at, not only do we look at our monthly on-time performance, if you were to ask me, so what about the current day? What does the on-time performance look like there? Well, if you look at it hour by hour, from that 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. Hour, on-time performance is going to be anywhere from 78 to 81%, fluctuates right in there. It's that 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. piece is where we really struggle, and we take a hit, and it's at about 68%. And then after 7 p.m., it then rises up into the mid-70s. Why we look at that is so that when we go ahead and create our strategies and how we're going to attack it, you know, we're just not utilizing resources unnecessarily and putting them in the 7 a.m. hour when our focus really needs to be in the afternoon. Also, if you were to ask me, hey, Tom, what's your 3 biggest challenges related to on-time performance, bus service, and such out there? You know, I would respond back with, you know, definitely traffic in the afternoon. And when we say traffic, what does that mean to the bus folks? That means we need to go ahead and look at our running times. You know, are they appropriate for the traffic congestion that's out there today so that we can, you know, make those adjustments? Also, many of the detours that are happening within our area, huge impact. And then also, like anything, if you have missed service out there, it puts a strain on the service that is out there. So those would be the 3 top issues that we're facing right now that, you know, that we're working towards. Next slide, please. So here's our mobility monthly OTP. And again, it's a 6-month look. Our on-time performance target is 90%, definitely trending in the upward direction. Both January and February, we're just knocking on the door there. We also know our challenges in this area, and a lot of it has to do with absenteeism / route closures. That's our biggest challenge. We conquer that, and we're going to be north of that 90% with no issues. Next slide, please. So our team strategy. You know, the 5 team strategies that we have here is our collective approach to achieving our goal. I want to go through each one of them. The active management part of it, you know, we have the operators out there, they're performing our service and such, but we need the management to go ahead and interact with all areas of our service. Our performance of service, you know, really getting out there. And what that means is what we call temperature checks. So temperature checks are at certain times of the day, 10 o'clock. These are real times. At 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock, our road supervision, they go ahead and they jump on a call. They're stationed throughout the system. They jump on a call and they report in, hey, what's going on in their area. They're documenting how many observations they've taken related to early, normal, and late, engaging with the workforce that's out in the field, like I said, documenting it, and then on that call they report out. And so what that gives us is, instead of, yes, the previous day's data is important and such, so we can look at it and go ahead and make adjustments and make our plan, but also in real time, so we can go ahead and adjust service accordingly. Coaching and engagement. This happens at the divisions. So our superintendents, they go ahead and they run through the reports and they look at the different performances of our operators. They call them in and they talk about performance. both challenging performance and good performance to let folks know what's going on out there, and also how the system is responding to their behavior and variables beyond our controlled behavior, so they know what's happening. Also, it allows for feedback from the operators to the division to really understand what's happening out there. You know what? Our pull-out blitz. Pull-out blitz it takes place in the morning. Right now, a regular morning, what that looks like, there's 2 supervisors out there at the garages, and they're helping assist the operators, you know, getting their bus, doing the pre-trips and such, and getting off the lot at their scheduled time. Well, a pull-out blitz is now we have 5 management staff. So now we have a staff of 7 folks that are out there doing the same thing, but also interacting and seeing the behaviors and what's going on and what are the challenges for a certain pull-out at the garage so that we can go ahead and make adjustments. I give you a prime example. The Hamilton, the way we were lining up the buses and such. You know what, definitely was a little bit unorganized. We got with the maintenance folks, we got together with the blockout team to make those adjustments for a more effective and efficient pull-out. Line blitz, actually is one of my favorite. Very similar to the pull-out, the line blitz is actually happening in the field. So last week they did the Route 83, and that's where 5 managers will go out on a route. In the middle of the route, they'll be at each of the time points, and they'll know which buses are coming and what time they're supposed to come. They'll board the bus, and they'll have that 20-second conversation with the operator to ensure, hey, kind of a health and welfare check, what's going on with the route out there. Is there anything that they can, give to us, let us know what's happening? And if it goes, if there's a much more deeper conversation that needs to be had, that supervisor will say, okay, you know what, I'll catch you at the end of the line or a different part of the day so we can go further into details, because it sounds like you're having, more trouble than we can, discuss in those 20 seconds. Of course, we don't want to hold up service. The data analysis, what's happening there is we have supervisors that go, we have a feature within our CAD AVL system, and that feature allows us to play back different scenarios in the past to understand what's happening with the schedule, with the bus, with the system overall, and we want to see if any of those issues are repetitive or if they're just one-time anomalies. And then with that, they'll take that data and disseminate to the team, the research and analysis team, the other operations folks and such, so that we can have a game plan moving forward. How do we attack, those situations? Next slide, please. Team engagement. So, not only do we have the operators out there, performing the service and such, but these are all the behind-the-scenes departments that also impact OTP, and I want to say kind of prepare it so that we can perform it. As I mentioned, the bus operations team just managing performance. I gave you an example of going out in the field with supervisors and doing the line blitz and such, but we also have our BCC folks, our bus communications center controllers. They're looking at the service in real time, and they're looking to see if buses are bunching or not bunching, what does the headways kind of look like, and then making decisions related to it. Also with that, anytime a controller in the bus communications center makes a decision to go ahead and alter the service, and what I mean the service, maybe you have 2 buses back to back, someone's running 20 minutes down and somebody's running on time. Hey, let's offload the passengers, put them on the next bus. Let's take that bus and let's head it to its current schedule. Anytime that happens, there's a text message that goes to myself and 5 other people so we can understand what's happening and what's happening, and holding also our controllers accountable for making those decisions in real time and what they should be. Our radio and bus maintenance folks, super important. It's so important to have current working equipment on board so that we can go ahead and use and collect data appropriately. I mentioned the bus communications center. Right now, we do have somewhat of a legacy system. We're in the process right now of getting a brand new system that's called Clever Devices. Those meetings have taken place, so that project's in motion. The bus stop planning department, they're all crucial, but them as well. You know, this department here is kind of writes our playbook. You know, they write all the Latin longs as to where our bus stops are and where our time points are. You know, sometimes things change out in the field over time, and we don't necessarily go ahead and change the playbook, so then therefore our data could be somewhat skewed. So we're definitely collecting that information on any of those issues, bring them up to this department, make changes. We go back and revisit to see you know, that the change actually happened and the data's changed. And in several cases, we've seen that happen. I mentioned the scheduling department, like I mentioned earlier, with the traffic and the running times. So not only for lates, but there's several areas within the system itself where, you know, we have too much time. And in cases where we have too much time, we let the scheduling department know that. And what they do is they go ahead and they reallocate those minutes. That's what's happening right now. So they'll say, hey, you know what? We're arriving to a time point 4 minutes early on a regular basis with all operators. Where can we take out 3 of those minutes or what have you and place them in a place where possibly we're struggling or at the end of the line taking place right now. Then we have research and analysis. Of course, I work with them closely, along with the rest of the team, of course. And, you know, they do deep dive into the information, and they kind of let us know or ask questions to us when they see something that, hey, just doesn't look right operationally and such. We go ahead and have those conversations to let them know, you know, operationally, this is how it works, so that we can come up with a solution. Is it a valid reason that, you know, that we're struggling in a certain area, you know, or not? So with that, next slide, please. Oh, great. Hey, so at this time, I'd like to turn it back over to you, Chairman Pond. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Any questions for Thomas? Jim?
Tom, thank you for a great
Cool.
presentation. It paints a really clear picture and helps us appreciate the complexity of this. The irony is not lost on me, colleague, that our greatest problem has to do with traffic congestion. And I wonder if anybody has thought about maybe working with the Georgia DOT, Atlanta DOT, no, not the Atlanta DOT. They can't, never mind. Did I say that out loud? To understand if we can reduce the number of people driving and put them in buses, what would that mean for the whole system? I don't think we've ever kind of looked at it in that kind of comprehensive way, and I think that would be a healthy exercise to undertake, because when we do the bus network redesign, I was talking to you about we're going to have massive disruptions, but then great benefits down the road. With bus network redesign, we have the opportunity to deliver something fresh and new and to attract new patrons. So that's something that I think is important to me. The second point I want to make is that what you've been describing is transportation logistics.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in Atlanta, the region, we have 2 of probably the most outstanding transportation logistics companies on the planet, in UPS and Delta Airlines. And I'm just wondering if it might make sense for us to do a little outreach and see if we could get some loaned people from those companies to come in and work with us and examine our entire system and offer suggestions for us to consider, rather than us just sort of, you know, here's what we see and here's what we think we need to do and that sort of thing. I forgot the third point, so I yield the floor.
Thank you, Jim. Great comments. We inside the transit landscape across the country, we do it's almost, you know, commonplace for we inside the network to understand the benefits of transit on congestion. And we've seen, you know, poster campaigns like, you know, you've probably all seen the one where you've got this highway full of traffic on the one side of the frame and then one bus on the other side of the frame. We've talked internally about using our bus advertising space to say this vehicle replaces 15 or 20 vehicles that would have been around you. You're welcome. So we want to really ramp that up for those that have never thought about that. So your point is very valid. But in terms of the actual metrics of beneficial use for transit, I'm not sure that I've ever seen that. So we'll take a look with the DOTs and see if we can't get them to come up with a number, you know, a matrix number that actually reflects the impact of transit on, for those that don't use it, right? And so that's the regardless of what modal share is for those that do use transit, we need the community to support transit, and that means those that don't use it would play a vital role in that.
Al, I remembered my third point. May I? I remember Janine and I talking about this back in an earlier iteration of Janine being on the board here. And we were talking about, you know, we survey and we query our existing patrons all the time.
Yeah.
Might we do a survey and a query of people who don't use our system to understand what is getting in the way of them trying it, using it, that sort of thing, so that it can inform how we might respond? That was my third point. And I don't need an answer, but let's think about that.
And then on the UPS and Delta, absolutely, we do, you know, we do share notes from time to time on a large scale thing. But the thing that's unique about bus transit, public transit, when you're moving people as opposed to packages is, you know, if UPS is early, that's not as bad a thing as if MARTA's early. So it's a real trick to make sure that we have, it was a 5-minute window. So if you're considered out of line if you are.
If you're 5 minutes late.
5 minutes
Yeah,
late, and-
so
and
less
if
than
you're
5.
early by,
No, you can't be
You
early
can't
at
be
all.
early at
We
all.
have zero tolerance for
Yeah.
early. So we have what they call a departure-based system.
Yeah.
You know, so with departure-based, so if you leave, you know, a minute early, that, you know, we told the customer you're going to be there at 3 o'clock and you left at 2:59. No, that's.
and in the transit industry, there are a lot of agencies split that 5 minutes differently. So some will allow you to be 2 minutes early and 3 minutes late, or vice versa. But MARTA says, no, we control early. So let's,
Yeah.
you know, so that's one of the main differences I find between us and package transportation logistics folks.
Mr. Frison?
Yeah, thank you for the information, Thomas. I
Sure.
appreciate it. I guess this is for Carly, this question here. In terms of mobility, this is on-time performance. Do we track also the no-shows? That means that, you know, somebody called to have mobility and they didn't arrive?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and I think that's important performance also around mobility. I see that there's been improvement on on-time performance, but my question is, you know, how many patrons have been left without a bus that they were expecting? And it tells us a lot about, to me, how well that is really performing. And I know we track customer complaints and concerns too.
Yes.
That would be something I'd like to take a look at, because I hear from people who use mobility, once they see my MARTA badge, and then they automatically gravitate toward me. And that's fine, but they have questions and comments about the mobility piece of it that I think I want to be able to answer in a very honest way, you know, but I would like to see just how we perform this when it comes to that, all right? So that would be helpful. And then, Thomas, you mentioned also that this clever devices.
Correct.
Clever device software?
Clever device is correct, yes.
Okay, is that for mobility service, or is that something that's for
It's
all
for,
services?
it's for fixed route.
It's for fixed route service?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and what would that tell you that you don't already have?
Yep. So what Clever Devices is, it's a CAD AVL system, so computer-aided dispatch, automatic vehicle locator. And they use the term CAD AVL. And that software, what it does is, it's primarily, there's two areas of it. The fixed end, which is going to be in the bus communication center. And so those controllers are going to be able to go ahead, they're going to get incident calls that come in. They're also going to be able to, they have what they call a performance queue, so they're going to be able to see their performance of the vehicle so that we could manage the vehicles in real time. Right now with our legacy system, we can do that. It's just a little bit more of a struggle, and that's the difference. So that's what most transit agencies have, an updated CAD system. It's incident management and route schedule adherence management.
All right, thank you.
Mayor Floyd?
Yeah, quick comment, first of all, talking about on-time service, I saw where the Stitch got a big grant the other day to do the cover over the downtown connector, $500 million or something. And I had the privilege of going down a couple of years ago and sitting through a presentation on that, and, you know, a lot of people don't realize when they built that throughway through there were 15 crossroads or something like that through there. Now there are 2 or 3. And if you put back 15, you know, right now to catch the bus over at the Atlanta Waterworks, or Howell Mill, whatever that is, oh, sorry. And if you catch that to go to the Art Center station at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's an hour trip. If you could change that to 15 minutes, which you would do if you put back all these roads, would have a tremendous impact on MARTA's ability to provide on-time, convenient service down there. So anyway, I just want to make that comment. Let's pay attention to that, because MARTA does have a significant stake in the completion of that project, and maybe even the one in Buckhead. I don't know whether that has anything to do. The other question I have is, did we ever decide what caught our bus on fire?
Yeah, are we, okay, so we just got feedback from, I was gonna say which one, Bill, I edited myself. We've gotten a breakdown. So there's engine compartment fires, there are tire fires, and I think those are largely the 2. And there's been a real effort put on by the operations team to address the different things that we can do. So technology in terms of monitoring devices and whatnot are being brought up. There are some operating discipline type of issues that we want to make sure we're on top of with, you know, when the operator notices smoke, what's the order of operations, what should happen? When our maintenance team is taking the bus in or dispatching the bus, are we making sure that we're on top of the checks? Are we making sure that we're governing, I think Goodyear, the tire provider, are we making sure that our governance structure over their process is tight? So multi-pronged, a lot of promise in terms of where we're going from here. There's been there was a comprehensive audit done not too long ago, George. Do you know how long that was for tires?
Yeah, that was just completed within the last week.
Okay, so a recent, you know, audit of the tire system, which found, you know, writ large compliance, but opportunities for us to continue managing.
Is that?
Yes, I had just a follow-up question on the technology that we have today and the technology that we may have in the future. I remember it was several years ago waiting for a bus in my neighborhood, and I was looking at the app, and I was like, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And then the dot kept on going, and there was no bus. And so I'm assuming that meant that was what the bus was supposed to be doing, but it wasn't actually being tracked in real time. Is that right?
So you are correct. So there's
Not your bus. I'm assuming you mean fixed route. You were riding a fixed
Yes.
route bus, so that's why I came to.
Okay. Yes.
So yes, the customer technology team that was created last April is working diligently to improve that. Part of what Thomas mentioned on the clever devices is going to help us. That right now, I think when you were seeing that, you're probably getting an update about every 2 minutes. That's when the dot would move.
Probably so.
We've actually started to use more cellular devices on the buses to get that information, and we also use a software by a vendor named called Swiftly, which you'll hear a little bit more about, that allows us to get that information every 5 seconds. And so you'll see the improvement of the information on the app and the vehicle location improve significantly. But this spring, April, May timeframe, after we reopen the airport, you'll also see improvements on what's in the screen and showing up on the rail stations as well. So, and you mentioned app. We'll be coming to you this spring as well to ask for permission to solicit for an RFP to replace the MARTA on the Go app, which is what you're using to see that information. And so it'll be likely by the end of the year before we actually have that available, that new app available, but we are working diligently to improve all of those customer-facing technologies to allow our riders to have the most recent and current updates as they travel.
Okay, great. So it should, I mean, even today, it should be the actual bus, not just the anticipated
Yes.
bus. Okay.
Yes.
Because I had the experience that the dot just kept on moving and I never saw a bus. But that was several years ago. Okay, well, that's great. So it should be real time that you can see
Yes.
it's on its way.
And if you're having troubles, email me.
Okay, thanks.
Jennifer, that's because you were looking down at your screen at the dot and you missed the bus go past you.
Mr. Fryson?
Yeah, I do want to revisit the bus fire situation. I thought that, I remember at one time we approved some fire suppression systems that was actually on the buses, and I don't know if that was for the new electric buses or some we were putting on the ones that we currently have.
Yep. No, our buses in the engine compartment itself, they do have sensors in there so that when the bus does reach a certain temperature, that they would go off and they would automatically go off to go ahead and put out the fire. And then also there's the manual button as well that the operator has an option to go ahead and press that button and go off as well. I can't say that if they went off or not. I'm not that deep into the investigation. I'd have to get with maintenance, but that feature is on their buses.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thomas, I have one quick question, be interesting for the board is
Sure.
with construction absenteeism and maintenance that cannot be anticipated, any one of those things can affect the schedule of 2 or 3 different bus routes. And to add on to that, how many buses during peak hours are on the move at any one time? How many hundreds? I think that'd be an interesting number.
Yep, the exact number is 303 buses at peak time.
How many?
303.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
The last item is other matters. It's in your board package, and it's for your information only with the January key performance indicators. Are there any other matters to come before this committee? Not, meeting adjourned.
At this time, we're going to call to order the External Relations Committee meeting of the MARTA Board of Directors, Thursday, March 28th, 2024. May I have a motion for the approval of the February 22nd, 2024 External Relations Committee meeting minutes? Do I have a motion? Okay, it's just not showing here, huh? Thank you. Let us vote. The minutes are approved. So we will have a resolution authorizing execution of sponsorship agreement between MARTA and the Atlanta United Football Club, LLC. Ms. Shanette Kaneda, Director of Marketing. Did I pronounce that correctly?
It's Kanita.
Kaneda.
Yes.
Thank you. I apologize.
No problem. All right. So good morning, Chair Scott, Vice Chair Ide, Mr. Greenwood, and board members. My name is Chinette Kanita, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Creative Services. This is a resolution authorizing execution of the sponsorship agreement between MARTA and Atlanta United Football Club, LLC. Next slide. We are seeking board approval to enter into this partnership with Atlanta United, which will allow us to leverage the soccer team's brand strength, popularity, and fan base to boost MARTA's brand visibility, increase ridership, and contribute to Atlanta's sports culture. By aligning with Atlanta United, we seek to enhance our profile as the transportation option while engaging with a diverse audience and reinforcing our commitment to serving the community. So over the next few slides, I'll answer the question of why should we partner with Atlanta United and review the elements of the partnership and the contract value. Next slide. So why should MARTA partner with Atlanta United? First, it's enhanced brand visibility. Partnering with Atlanta United, one of the most prominent sports franchises in Atlanta, really offers us extensive exposure to a diverse and engaged audience. Through various marketing channels, which we'll get into, we can increase our brand visibility among soccer fans and the broader Atlanta community, reinforcing our presence as a key player in the city's transportation landscape. It'll also create targeted marketing opportunities. Atlanta United's fan base represents a wide demographic range, including families, young professionals, and sports enthusiasts. By strategically aligning MARTA's sponsorship with specific events, promotions, or fan engagement activities, it will ensure maximum impact and affinity with potential riders. It also allows MARTA to demonstrate its commitment to the local community and support initiatives that resonate with Atlanta residents. MARTA can strengthen its ties with the community, fostering goodwill and positive brand associations. So Atlanta United draws large crowds to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. For example, the first home match of the season drew 67,000 fans. It has 71,000 seats. So this presents an opportunity for MARTA to showcase its role in providing convenient and reliable transportation solutions to attendees, positioning MARTA as an important part of the game day experience, offering fans a hassle-free way to get to the action. MARTA can leverage its partnership with Atlanta United to promote sustainability initiatives, encourage eco-friendly transportation choices appealing to environmentally conscious consumers, and reinforce our position as a forward-thinking and responsible transportation provider. So lastly, we see this partnership as a major step towards establishing stronger connections with other local sports teams and event venues. And further allows us to forge a long-term collaborative relationship with Atlanta United as we all prepare for the World Cup in 2026. Next slide. So as an Atlanta native, I proudly watched as my city has ascended to become the nation's soccer capital. Atlanta United has some of the most passionate, diverse fan bases, representing various demographics, again, the city and beyond. By partnering with the team, MARTA gains direct access to the extensive fan network, fostering deeper engagement and connection with the current and potential riders. Next slide. Atlanta United is also the top performing soccer club in the U.S. Of special note, it's #1 with total jersey sales, #1 with active users on its digital platforms, and we see that 69% of Atlanta's DMA has an interest in soccer, which will be important in just a second. All right, so Atlanta United is also the top next slide. Thank you. Atlanta United is also it's #1, so through strategic and collaborative marketing efforts with Atlanta United, we can effectively communicate our services and benefits to a broader audience, driving increased ridership and support. So let's get into the elements of the partnership. I'll take you through the rights and designations, MARTA ticket package, and retail activation, in-stadium branding, social media, digital and radio activation, pre-match activation, and hospitality. Next slide. MARTA will have the right to use Atlanta United's logos, marks, and 4 of the players' likenesses in custom promotions to increase our ridership and to drive revenue. Next slide. Atlanta United will promote 1 match with a special ticket package for MARTA. The package will include an exclusive co-branded t-shirt, Atlanta United ticket, and 1 round trip loaded onto a custom co-branded breeze card, which can be reloaded or kept as a keepsake. And I think the most exciting part of the partnership is the launch of the co-branded line of apparel, which will include a scarf, hat, pin, sweatshirt, and t-shirt, which will be sold at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Atlantic Station, and online, and at MARTA pop-ups. We'll receive, next slide. Thank you. We'll receive 2 minutes of in-stadium branding, the mega column and LED ribbon, which you see here. The ribbon board combines to give us the ability to not only share our brand and message with fans in attendance, but also change the color of the stadium. The LED ribbon boards alone total almost 2,700 feet of signage. That massive 100-foot tall mega column has more total square footage than 14 NFL teams' entire main scoreboard. These high definition displays also have full motion capability. Next slide. The partnership also includes 10 minutes of content on the stadium's Internet Protocol televisions, or IPTV monitors, delivering rich HD video content to more than 1,600 public displays in the stadium, which will be a perfect way to capture fans' attention while they're walking the concourse or waiting in concession lines. We can also direct fans towards the best exits to use MARTA following each match. Next slide. So earlier, I spoke about Atlanta United's high-performing digital platforms. As part of this agreement, we'll launch season-long social media promotions, 250,000 run-of-site banner ads on the Atlanta United website. This means the ad will be displayed 250,000 times across the website's pages for the duration of the advertising campaign. We'll promote the MARTA ticket package through banner ads, and we'll run a 30-second pre-game spot and 30-second post-game spot on Atlanta United's English and Spanish radio for all matches, which will allow us to reach fans whether they're in their car or leaving a match or out just running errands. Next slide. So on June 2nd, 2024, the match against Charlotte, MARTA will have 1 branding and distribution opportunity at Atlanta United's tailgating fan event located at the Home Depot backyard. Next slide. Lastly, our sponsorship agreement includes 8 lower-level season tickets, which can be used for customer appreciation campaigns, employee recognition, and business development opportunities. Next slide. This is a request for approval of the sponsorship. The 2024 sponsorship amount is $190,000. The 2025 sponsorship amount is $195,000, and if applicable, the third-year sponsorship ask is $201,571, in which either party may opt out of the final year of the agreement. Now, as you've heard in previous presentations from Stephanie Fisher about our media coverage, when MARTA is mentioned in a news story or on social media, there is an advertising value equivalent to that coverage, and that is calculated by the size and reach of the news outlet or social media poster. While an advertising value equivalent can't be calculated until after the fact, our experience tells us that this placement of MARTA's brand in high-traffic venues such as Mercedes-Benz Stadium and on Atlanta United's app and digital properties, it's worth tens of millions in advertising value for us, making this partnership a great investment. Next slide. So as I stated in the beginning, our goal is to create a partnership that will connect MARTA with the emotion and spirit of Atlanta United's fan base and produce measurable results for the authority. You know, while we anticipate a significant ROI, we will evaluate success and effectiveness by tracking key metrics and KPIs, including revenue, ridership, customer engagement, customer feedback, and social media metrics. And by analyzing these data points, we can assess the impact, identify areas for improvement, and make informed decisions to optimize the partnership's outcomes. Thank you.
Need to turn the mic on. Thank you. May I have a motion for approval of the resolution? So moved. May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Durrett. Is there any discussion or questions? Ms. Ide.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say I am so excited about this opportunity. This is fantastic. I think everything you said about Atlanta United pulling the city together is so true, and I think it is one of those opportunities when people who may not otherwise ride MARTA do ride it regularly to the games. So it's great exposure for us. So thank you for your work on this.
Sure. Mr. Durrett?
Thank you.
This is brilliant. I mean, it really is brilliant. And I have a question about the asterisk next to 2026. I imagine that whatever we negotiate with Atlanta United would not apply during the World Cup, because that'll be a completely different campaign, right?
Well, absolutely. We'll change the campaign. We can change the campaign throughout the
No,
contract.
but I mean, FIFA will probably say
Yes.
they will be the ones that
Yes,
pick.
for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
When you said we'll be able to change the colors of the stadium, what did you mean exactly?
The LED lights are so bright that whatever you put up there, it changes the entire stadium.
So it would be like the lights on the roof.
It would be, you want to go back, but it's the band that goes around. And as you change those, it changes the lights in the stadium.
Okay.
Mhm.
And a couple more things real quick. The 4 players, excuse me, likenesses that we
Yes.
get to use. Who selects those players?
They do.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And then the final thing is, I think it's important, and I don't know if we can do this, but I think it's really important that after the games, we do everything we can to have more frequent service so that people aren't experiencing the sardine atmosphere and the inability to get on trains and having to wait for another 10 minutes or something for the next train. So I'd like us to be really thoughtful about that. But this is brilliant, and it gets exactly at what I'm talking about, which is communicating to the public how great we are and are even greater going to be. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Durrett. Mr. Worthy?
I just wanted to make sure that the 4 players you use their image of, make sure that Piedmont logo on their sleeve. It's on our ads too. Want to make sure Miss Hardy heard that.
Noted.
decide.
I do have one more question that's a follow-up to Jim and making sure people have a good experience. Didn't we a couple of weeks ago talk about the Vine City Station and opening and making maybe something about that? Because I know my children think I'm brilliant, that I know to walk around the side and go in what I call the back door of it and not get stuck in the crowd. But am I right that there's something going on with the Vine City to make that less of a bottleneck?
Yeah, I believe maybe Colleen can speak to this. There's been some tours with the counselor and making sure that Vine City is, deemed more accessible and has a better profile for events like this. Colleen, did you have anything to add?
Colleen Kiernan, AGM of External Affairs. Not really. We have been working closely with Councilmember Amos, who's the chair of transportation and also represents the area. His concern was more around the bus circulation and the parking lot that now has a gate on it for safety reasons, but we will work on both the Vine City Station in anticipation for World Cup, as well as making sure that, the west gates at Dome Station we'll look at, or GWCC Station, we'll look at making, we'll walk through with George and the facilities team and make sure that the experience is as good as possible as this relationship is launched.
Yeah, that's great, because I think getting there is rarely a problem, but it's the leaving when everybody's, at the street side of Vine City where it gets really backlogged and you can walk around the side and use the other entrance, but most people don't. There's not signage telling you can do that, so I think that could be helpful.
China, did you say that the Atlanta United was the #1 soccer team?
Yes.
It's not Toronto. No, it's not Toronto.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, let us vote. Thank you. The resolution passes. At this time, we will have a resolution authorizing the approval of MARTA's updated advertising policy. Kevin Hackshaw, Manager of Business Development and Sales. Welcome, Mr. Hackshaw.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Scott, Vice Chair Ide, Mr. Greenwood, and members of the External Relations Committee. My name is Kevin Hackshaw, Manager of Sales and Business Development, and may I direct your attention to the resolution authorizing the approval of MARTA's updated advertising policy. Next slide, please. MARTA's advertising policy provides guidance for the sale of advertising on the following assets: print advertising inside of our rail stations, bus shelters, inside and upon buses and rail cars, video displays inside of our rail stations, buses and trains, and finally, advertising and web links displayed on websites operated by the authority. Next slide, please. The purpose of MARTA's ad programs is to raise revenue to aid in financing the authority's operations. An added benefit we believe these proposed changes will allow MARTA to maintain, enrich, and contribute to a harmonious tone throughout the neighborhoods it serves by attracting advertisements of goods and services that the average rider perceives as desirable. Next slide, please. So that brings us to proposed ad policy changes. The authority wishes to attract advertisements of goods and services that the average rider perceives as desirable. If advertisers perceive that the authority's facilities as a medium for advertising goods and services that the average rider perceives as less desirable, then advertising rates and revenues will decline. So with that in mind, the authority is proposing that the following categories be removed from MARTA assets. 1, alcohol, including wine, beer, and liquor. 2, massage parlors. 3, tattoo parlors. 4, title pawn or pawn shops. 5, check cashing institutions. 6, legal advertising. And 7, personal use modes of transportation. Next slide, please. Timeline and other considerations. We do expect a short-term revenue decline.
And while we do know that that revenue does hurt to some degree, we believe we will recover quickly because the ads will be geared more towards those things that the average rider will find more desirable. As part of bringing this new policy to the public and our ad partners, we also believe that with MARTA's adoption of digital ad formats, so I'm sure if you've been in one of our rail stations, you've seen our digital advertising boards, as well as the creation of a community ad program that we're working on currently that will focus on neighborhood retail, arts, and nonprofit organizations getting the opportunity to advertise on our assets, that this will also aid in our recovery. And finally, our updated policy will take immediate effect after board approval. However, MARTA will provide a 6-month grace period for our ad partners to wrap up any existing ad campaigns. We expect this to be done by the end of September 2024. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, the Department of Marketing and Sales respectfully requests the approval of the resolution for the approval of changes to MARTA's advertising policy. Next slide, please. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hackshaw. At this time, do I have a motion for the approval of the resolution? Ms. Ide?
Yes, thank you. I'm in.
Sorry, I didn't hear the motion. Did I get?
Oh, it was on mine.
It was on, okay. I'm looking between the two.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Pond. I have a second by Ms. Ide. And Ms. Ide, please ask your question.
Thank you. I am in support of this, as my mama would say. It's kind of tacky, some of the ads we have now. So why do we think there will be a decline in revenue, and for how long? Is that because there will be a gap in advertising, or because we think we will have to lower the rates to attract different kinds of advertisers?
So I think the problem is that legal and alcohol sales are the vast majority of what we have right now. So they take almost 40 to 50% of our advertising. So when we take those out of the system, we then have to look for other advertisers to fill that gap. So there's it'll take time for us to be able to fill that. I don't think we're going to look at lowering rates. I don't think that's the way to go. I think really what our ad partners are going to do is just get more aggressive with other partners that they're going to look to put on the buses and trains and other assets.
Okay, so it's really just the time that the sales effort is going to take to
Correct.
attract new advertisers?
Correct.
Okay. Well, good luck with that effort. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Worthy?
Congratulations. I've been on the board for 7, 8 years now, and I am so excited to see this coming forward. I am very excited about potentially getting some of the plaintiff attorneys that are suing us off of the advertisements of our assets. To quote that wise philosopher Jimmy Buffett, you know, there's a thin line between Saturday night and Sunday morning. When it comes to alcohol sales, I think I know what you're trying to capture, but in a city home to Coca-Cola, you know, they're now in the alcohol business with Topo Chico. I don't know if a blanket alcohol ban is the way to go. I think I know what you're trying to capture, but I also think that might catch something that is unintended. If Coke wants to do a Coke Zero wrap and then next month do a Topo Chico wrap, I wouldn't want to turn down that revenue. So I don't know if we want to go back and investigate that a little bit. I don't even know how to thread that needle. I would leave that in your hands, your able hands, but that might be something we want to think about.
Understood. I think part of, you just said, it's really threading the needle, because determining what's allowed versus what's not allowed in terms of alcohol, it then becomes a really slippery slope, because then you're going to have somebody else come back and they're going to say, well, why not this if that? So it's a lot easier to just say, we're not going to allow any of it. The same thing for legal. We'll just take it all off. And that's not to say that it can't be revisited in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Pond?
Well, Mr. Worthy covered my congratulations on pulling off the legal ads, but my question is, as we go forward, we talked about it at a safety briefing a couple of months ago about trying to let people know about the See and Say app they can use for safety or some updated follow-up type application. I would just hope on the trains that, and all the buses that we would leave some advertising space to allow riders, if there's a problem on the train or a bus, that they can use that app to contact the police department. That whole safety issue, I think we can take a real step up in advertising. So not many people are aware of it.
And the good news is that we already do that. So if you look at most of our trains, we're running the See and Say app, 988 ads for suicide awareness, multiple other MARTA positive ads that you'll see throughout the system as well. So they're already there.
Okay.
Ms. Jones?
Thank you for the update. I have two questions. My first is, one of the prohibited items was personal use modes of transportation. Can you clarify what that is, please?
Sure. That's scooters, cars, anything that doesn't promote transit use.
So then my question is, so we have like dockless, shared mobility, micro-mobility devices that people use for first and last mile connectivity to get to and from the train station. So I just question whether or not that does not help increase people's ability or thought process about using MARTA as accessible if they are using those devices to get to the train station. So just wanting to put that out there. And then the second question is, in the resolution, it mentions that community education, health and safety campaigns adopted by the Ad Council will be considered paid advertising. So does this mean that any current donated ad spaces, is that program completely being eliminated?
No, that will still stay in place.
Thank you, Mr. Frierson.
Yeah, I wonder, even though we're gonna be losing some of the alcohol and wine, beer, and liquor advertisement, I think that there's some opportunities to do some local neighborhood advertisement for events that go on in these spaces. I'm assuming that if it's a nonprofit organization, they want to do something about some event they may have in like some 5K walk or run or festival or something like that, they would be able to use some of the advertisement spaces in that place.
Yep. So the community advertising program will specifically address events like that for nonprofits, arts organizations, and really a big piece of it is to encourage the local businesses that may not have had the opportunity to advertise on our assets before. They can actually start doing that. So that's part of the program's purpose.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frierson. Mr. Worthy?
I'm sorry, I have a second question. I'm so excited about I'm more excited about this is the most excited I've been since we sunk the train car. I think Ms. Jones makes a really, really good point, especially as it relates to, I think we need to be careful as it relates to not only the micro-mobility aspect she's talking about, but also, we partner, Lyft and Uber are our partners, and so if we have to put up any information about Lyft and Uber and the credits that we offer our riders, that we want to make sure that that's still allowed. And then the second question is, I know that a lot of it will come with the new train cars, but I remember the RFP and voting on the very snazzy new interface. I think that's the company in the interface. Intersection. Thank you. Yeah. Intersection digital ads that are, constantly, we can change it kind of on demand. It's not unlocking a piece of glass and sticking another poster up in there. So I assume that this policy has been made and drafted in anticipation of a whole new advertising medium that we're looking forward to receiving.
That is correct.
Ms. Odd?
Yes, in the same lines as Mr. Worthy, I think that Ms. Jones raises a really important issue, that some of these modes of transportation are complementary to MARTA, not competitive with it. And I don't know how you thread the needle on that and maybe Mr. Andrews has some thoughts on
I
that.
think that needle's easier to thread than the alcohol.
Yes, so that, and I would love it, I don't know if that's something we can resolve today or not, but I do think that MARTA doesn't go everywhere, and we do want to encourage people to get to MARTA in, you know, green, safe, you know, efficient ways. So I don't know how we could carve that out in some way.
Mr. Andrews?
Yeah, I was hoping not to have these conversations on camera, but, you know, as usual, my lawyer friends are the ones who say the quiet parts out loud and create the problem, even though they should know better in some cases. We'll go back and take a closer look at it, but, you know, as y'all are aware, you know, we are trying to continue to maintain our platform as a non-public space, and therefore, really, we've got to be careful that we maintain that the, you know, main sole purpose is to generate revenue and not create a platform that actually competes with what we're trying to do, which is increase ridership and generate revenue. So it is hard to, you know, check all those boxes at the same time as leave the ones unchecked for, you know, some personal, quote unquote, personal interests, right, where we have local companies that, you know, we think highly of, but we can't really take that into account without potentially creating a problem. So we'll come back and we'll take another look at it and try and make some changes if possible that won't harm the policy overall before the board meeting. But we hear you. It's just that there are many competing factors that we have to take into account so that we don't either wind up in a situation where we have no control over the signage or we just have zero signage at all because we try and thread that needle a little too much.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Mr. Durrett?
I'm guessing that between now and April 11th, you can process this input and get back to us and say, here's what we've done, and maybe there's an amendment or something that comes before us at the 11th.
Absolutely. We're going to keep our first principle objective in mind, filter in some really good feedback that we've had this morning, and come back to you with something that we anticipate will stand.
And finally, I think in Atlanta United and Piedmont, we might have two good prospects for advertising.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, let us vote. Thank you, Mr. Hackshaw. The resolution passes.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll have a briefing with the Government Affairs update from Ms. Colleen Kiernan, Assistant General Manager, External Affairs.
So Jennifer LaRosa, Senior Director of Government Affairs. Today is Sine Die, so I was going to be at the Capitol, but with where things stand, I was able to be here to give this briefing for you today. So good morning, Chair Scott, Vice Chair Ide, CEO Greenwood, and board members. Today is Sine Die of the 2024 legislative session, a time at which we have a good idea of where everything will land. However, nothing is over till it's over, so we'll be at the Gold Dome well into the night tonight tracking final results. Next slide, please. With qualifying complete, here are the local elections from our jurisdictions. We'll see in the Georgia primary on May 24th and perhaps some on the runoff on June 18th. From Fulton County, District 2 incumbent Bob Ellis is not primaried, but will have a general election challenge. In District 4, incumbent Natalie Hall has 2 primary challengers. In District 6, incumbent Khadija Abdul Rahman has 2 primary challenges. In DeKalb County, chairs the CEO term limited. This election will be decided in the primaries between 3 county commissioners, Larry Johnson, Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, and Steve Bradshaw. District 2 incumbent Robert Patrick has primary challenge from Dorville Councilmember Andy Yeoman. District 4, with current commissioner running for CEO, this race will be decided in the primaries between 4 candidates. District 5, incumbent Marita Davis Johnson has primary challenge, and District 6, Ted Terry is unchallenged. In Clayton County, incumbent Jeff Turner is running for sheriff, and 2 current commissioners running for chair along with 2 others, which will probably be decided in the primaries. District 2 incumbent Gail Hambrick is unchallenged, and District 3 has 4 in the primary, and then the winner will face a general opponent. Next slide, please. On the state level, 92 House and 22 Senate races will be contested. 4 members are retiring from the General Assembly. Some contested races from our jurisdictions include Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones will face primary challenge in addition to a general election due to a redraw of her district. Syra Draper and Becky Evans from Atlanta will fight each other as a result of their districts being combined. Sally Harrell, Nan Orrock, and Elena Parent will fight to hold their seats against Democratic challengers, and Misha Maynor won't have any Republican opposition in the primary, but 5 Democrats are running for the right to face her in the general election. Next slide, please. So legislation where it stands as of now, HB 1443, BRT camera enforcement local legislation, was pulled from the House local calendar, where it was set for a floor vote on Monday, March 18th. Thanks to some efforts from our sponsor, Representative Holland, the vote was postponed to the next legislative day, Wednesday, March 20th, rather than an immediate floor vote or recommitted. A few members of the Republican leadership were resistant to the bill being local, and this gave us some time to educate them some more. After multiple additional conversations, the bill was returned to the local calendar, and we were prepared for a full floor vote on Wednesday, the 20th. Unfortunately, instead of proceeding to a vote, a few House members prevailed, and the bill was pulled again and recommitted to the Committee of Origin as a general bill, essentially killing it as there would not be enough time for the full legislative process in each chamber. SB 358, the Senate version of 1443, was signed by every City of Atlanta Senate delegation member, with exception of one out on leave, was first read and assigned to the General SLOGO Committee Monday, March 18th. With the SLOGO chairman unwilling to give the bill a hearing, and with the classification of general legislation as well in this chamber, the bill ran out of time to go through the legislative process. HB 1115, which was the bill's primary purpose to remove the prohibition simultaneously levying a lost-in host to phase out certain local sales tax and authorize a new flexible penny local sales option, FLOST. After stalling in the Senate committee, this measure was added to SB 349 in a House Ways and Means committee and came out on day 37, the second time out of committee. There was a few edits that day, with the transit exemption language, and passed. We await for the bill to make it onto the House floor sometime today, where we expect the Senate to receive the bill, insist on their position of the language prior to the House changes, and send it to the conference committee for the finance chairman to battle out for the tax package for the year. HB 1312, the House version of this bill extends the effective date of the policy passed last year to begin taxing electricity for EV charging to January 1st, 2026, but did not pass the Senate committee. The bill had a hearing on 314 in regulated industries where it was gutted completely and turned into an elections bill to have the PSC ensured staggered terms. The key language extending the effective date of the EV charging tax was tacked onto HB 516, the GDOT housekeeping bill, in Senate Transportation Committee. The bill passed out of the Senate chamber last Thursday on the 21st with a floor amendment for speed detection devices on state highways. The House removed the amendment and sent it back to the Senate. The Senate can either agree and send the bill to the governor or insist on the speed detection amendment, sending it to conference committee, and we will watch for those final results as well. HB 1358, the legislation that proposed the abolishment of the ATL in Greta and transferring of duties and authorities to CERTA on July 24th, 2024. After many rumors of amendments to this bill, we do not anticipate the bill moving this session, but we'll continue to watch the rest of the day. Next slide, please. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Durrett?
Collie, when will the Summerhill BRT be operational? I'm sorry, I don't have that.
May 2026. May 2025. Yes.
July
July.
2025.
It may be ready in July 2025.
That's what you meant to say.
That's what I meant to say. Thank you.
So we have an opportunity to, with others, educate those that are opposed to using cameras to keep our lanes clear.
We will
next year.
certainly be doing an education process on that and MARTA Act and other items. With or without this legislation, we can still enforce the lanes with APD and MPD doing citations. I think that we were hoping to do it this session, so we had time for a procurement period next year. So that was.
Yeah, we were contemplating that. We're going to try again, number one. Number two is there are enforcement opportunities. It's about how we spend our resources. And number three, there are design elements that we may consider to better govern user behavior in those designated lanes. In other words, some of the capital improvements or some of the adjustments that we could make to that lane through Carrie's group are being contemplated at this point.
Well, maybe when I retire, I'll volunteer to be a lane monitor.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, seeing none, thank you. At this time, we'll have a briefing regarding media impressions, November 2023 through February 2024. Stephanie Fisher, Senior Director of Communications. Good morning, Ms. Fisher.
Hello, everyone. Chair Scott, Vice Chair Ide, Mr. Greenwood, and committee members. Again, I'm Stephanie Fisher. I'm the Senior Director of Communications, and it's my pleasure to present an overview of our media impressions for November 2023 through February of this year. Next slide, please. MARTA was mentioned over 1,000 times in news stories in November, some of the highlights being additional funding secured by our federal delegation for the Safe Routes to Transit project, more recognition for Coy Dumas Jr., MARTA's most celebrated employee, as he announced his retirement, the groundbreaking celebration at the site of the future Kensington Station TOD, and the premiere of the Next Movement film featuring local artists of color performing on a MARTA rail car. All of this good news registered as almost entirely positive or neutral in tone and at an advertising value equivalent, or AVE, of $3 million. Next slide, please. December saw a similar number of mentions as November, although we did see a decline in the amount of positive news coverage. That was likely due to one of the month's most covered stories, the 5 Points Transformation Project advancing to the public review process under NEPA, and news that that construction work will necessitate a partial closure of the station. Highlights of the positive news coverage include the deployment of 2 rail cars from our original fleet into the Atlantic Ocean, where they will develop into reef habitats. Thomas? The naming of Katie Powers as MARTA's new board chair, the first from Clayton County, and our system-wide holiday celebrations that included live performances, customer appreciation events, surprise giveaways, and our Festa buses spreading lots of cheer. The coverage had an advertising value equivalent of $7 million. Next slide, please.
Hey, was Katie included in the 85% positive or the 15%?
That's Mr. Worthy.
Always
The
positive.
was that I was finally out of there.
2024 began with news of our year-long celebration of Atlanta civil rights icons and our first specially designed bus featuring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. Mr. Greenwood joined Dr. Bernice King at a bus unveiling and book signing event. For the King holiday, the historic bus was staged across from Dr. King's childhood home. It's something we do every year, and it got a lot of visitors. A special shout out to bus operator and MARTA historian Julius Thomas, who accompanies the bus every year and shares information about the role that public transit plays in the civil rights movement. January really turned out to be the month of the bus, with state lawmakers experiencing the ease of BRT and the importance of dedicated lanes while on their way to and from the Eggs and Issues breakfast. We tried, Jennifer. We tried. The announcement of the second phase of senior affordable housing at our Avondale Station TOD was part of the 60% of positive and neutral news coverage we received during the month, and it did contribute to the $5 million in advertising value. We saw a higher percentage of negative news coverage in January, though. We had 2 violent incidents at 5 Points. But when we were providing information to the media about these crimes, we remained focused on how the swift action from our MARTA police officers in both cases prevented further violence. Next slide, please. February saw around 1,000 mentions, and almost all of that coverage was positive or neutral in tone. We did have a lower advertising value equivalent in February of just over $1 million, likely due to, it's a little bit of a shorter month, obviously, and we have news outlets covering us who don't have as large an audience reach.
Our Black History Month campaign received a lot of great coverage. A big thank you to our talented marketing team for the images and the info we were able to easily share with all of our media partners. And same for the fun, touching visuals from our system-wide celebration of Valentine's Day. It's always a customer favorite. We do have quite a few riders who met their partners on MARTA, and even some that have gotten married on the system. Also in February, Mr. Greenwood was invited to the White House for a roundtable discussion on clean bus manufacturing. Heads of this country's largest transit agencies talked about all of the challenges facing the U.S. bus manufacturing industry as transit authorities transition to low and zero-emission buses. And last month, you'll remember we announced an upcoming 6-week closure of Airport Station so that we can replace the floor tiles and prepare for the installation of the new canopy. So the next time I'm before you, I will bring great news about how all of the news coverage went. Next slide, please. Our social media presence continues to increase with more engagement than ever. From November through February, we had almost 4 million impressions, close to 200,000 engagements, and 250,000 people watched our videos or our reels. Here you see our most popular posts from each month. In November, it was the Take the Train to the Plane campaign, encouraging people to take MARTA to the airport as the airport was closing one of its long-term parking lots. Coy Dumas Jr. was the man again in December after he announced his retirement from driving. Mr. Greenwood, being named one of Georgia Trend's 100 most influential Georgians, for the second year in a row, I might add, was our top performing post in January. In February, it was a post sharing the news that Atlanta will host 8 World Cup matches in 2026 that got our followers talking. Our overall most popular post was an idea from our youngest communications team member, Angela Jetty. The young'uns know what's up online. She decided to combine 2 trending memes. One was about if I won the lottery, I wouldn't tell anyone there'd be signs, and the MARTA system dream map. This post was the type of social media engagement that our followers love, and we will continue to do more of. Our most looked at, engaged with post of all time. Next slide, please. And finally, I'd like to just take a minute to recognize Artbound. Catherine, Tracy, and Santana, they work with Angela in our communications department to push out great news about our Artbound program, all of the incredible community events and involvement. Artbound news is consistently among the most covered in the news media and on social media, and it is always positive in tone. Thanks so much for your attention today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Fisher? Comments? None? Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
Thank you.
Are there any other matters to come before the External Relations Committee? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.